So today I would like to talk about VMX for deadline and the Cloud Wizard. The idea behind VMX for deadline is to be able to render anywhere, take full advantage of public and private clouds, so that wherever your resources may come from, you can utilize them to the max. And also the VMX Cloud Wizard that installs a cloud-based render farm in your own cloud account. So what I want to do today is I want to do a live run of the Cloud Wizard. And so I'm going to get this started because it takes a little time. During the presentation, I'm going to jump back and forth between the presentation and the Cloud Wizard so that you can see it running. So let me switch over to that right now. Oh, where are we here? Right there. Oops, that's not the one. Bear with me for a moment. There it is. Okay. So essentially, the VMX Cloud Wizard creates a complete installation of Deadline 7 in the VMX extension, currently supporting the Google Compute platform, and we'll have other ones coming soon. And it usually takes less than about 30 minutes. And the welcome page just tells you some of the things that you should do in advance of running the wizard so that it runs smoothly for you. Of course, license agreement and email address. Normally this would be the account that you're using on Google. And a PIN number that we will provide you. Whoops, need to select the right box. Okay. That's going to talk to our licensing service and get some temporary licensing going. The authentication stage just identifies a project ID that you've set up within your Google account and the authentication file, which I'm going to select right now. I have downloaded in advance. And then I'm going to proceed with the, in this we have optional integration with Shotgun. Mike talked about our pipeline integration features. We're use the wizard to automatically set up Shotgun integration if you have it, and watch for additional project tracking services in the near future as well. So I'm going to skip over that one for the moment, and I'm going to do the network setup. The network, basically, when you set up cloud rendering, you have to create sort of a virtual network on your cloud account, and so when you do that, you need to specify a network, and we let you put in the network subnet that you prefer to use so that it doesn't conflict with anything that you might be using locally. And when I press next, it's going to go ahead and start doing some work on the cloud based on what I've input so far. It's going to go ahead and begin the network setup. Right now it's logging into my Google account and starting to do a bunch of configuration. So this will take about a minute to run. So while that's running, I'm going to switch back to the slides and talk a little bit about using the cloud. So why would you use the cloud? Well, lots of obvious reasons. I think it's a good alternative for small shops and for four-wall projects that don't need a local farm. They don't want to make that capital expense or maintain the staff that's needed to run a farm. It's great for spikes in demand that overwhelm a local farm. Local farms, no matter how big they are a fixed resource, and it always seems like no matter how much you have, the day comes when your farm is overloaded. It'd be great if you could offload that. And they're excellent for collaboration. Almost all the tools that you use today, we see almost everything moving to some sort of cloud interface so that people can work from mobile devices and collaborate that way. And of course, artist productivity, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail. So this is sort of a notional graph of artist productivity, and what this graph is trying to show is that the longer it takes to get feedback from your job, you submit something, you wait, and then finally you get results. That's your iteration time, and the longer it takes to get iterations out, the lower your productivity, the lower the quality of your final project. So ideally, we want to keep the iterations as quick as possible. This graph is showing essentially a load on a queue over the course of a week. So these letters at the bottom are just days of the week, and you start off, and as the week progresses, the queue sort of builds up and builds up because it's people are piling on the work, and as it builds up, the turnaround time slows, and so the red line, which is artist productivity, drops. And then over the weekend, hopefully the queue gets a chance to unload a bit, and if anyone happens to be working, their productivity goes up because they're getting fast turnaround, and then the whole thing starts over again in the following week. Well, if you're using a public cloud resource, you have the advantage that you have the elasticity, you have the scale. And so what I'm showing with this graph here is these peaks that have turned white represents work that we've offloaded up to the cloud. So heavy simulations or really compute-intensive jobs, if those are pushed up to the cloud, then your local farm can be sort of limited to a certain amount of processing, and that means that your artists get a faster turnaround and more consistent turnaround, and their productivity stays high. So, while cloud computing does come at a bit of a premium when you're considering labor costs and these sort of considerations, it actually can save you money over time. So I heard a little chime telling me that the wizard is done with the network setup, so I'm going to go ahead and click next and proceed on with this. The next thing it wants to do is set up some infrastructure virtual machines. This is the VPN server, for example, so that there can be secure communication between your local machine and your cloud account. And it will also set up the deadline component server VM that includes things like the repository and Flex and so forth. So when I click next, it's going to go ahead and get started doing this. Now, to be fair, when you're running this normally, this process takes a little longer than what we've shown here because the virtual machine images for the infrastructure are copied from the ThinkBox account into your account. Because I'm operating entirely within the ThinkBox account, that process doesn't take any time, and so this happens a little bit more quickly, which is good for the demo. So, but this is still going to take a few minutes to do the configuration, so I'm going to switch back and continue. OpenStack ecosystem growth. Quickly, this is just showing numbers from 2013 given to me by Jonathan Bryce, who's the executive director of the OpenStack Foundation. Just showing that with each release, the community participation in OpenStack has grown. I think it's representative of all cloud stacks, public and private, and I think it has continued to grow. The window that just popped up on the screen is a little VPN software. The Cloud Wizard sets up a VPN software to configure so that there's secure communication between the local machine and the cloud, as I mentioned previously. So that happens automatically, which is nice. Private clouds. So the distinction between a private and a public cloud is this. A private cloud is just like a render farm, essentially. It's private means it's running on your own in your own facility, on your own equipment. The difference between a normal render farm and a private cloud, however, is that you have a cloud controller that's launching and terminating VMs on that cloud. And the advantages are that you get the ability to configure VMs that are tailored to each application. So if you have applications that might conflict because they use different libraries or whatever reason, you can create a very pristine, consistent environment so that you get very clean execution. Virtual machines are somewhat idealized in that sense, so you get a very nice, clean environment. You can render on multiple operating systems, Linux of your choice or Windows, and you don't have to re-image a portion of your farm or segment your farm into different operating systems because a certain software only runs on one operating system. You get some advantages there. And a big one is simplified IT. Your IT department really just needs to get a hypervisor running on the new hardware as opposed to installation of all the software. And then once the hypervisor is running, then jobs will load VMs, and the VMs take care of all the software. So there's a lot of advantages there. Now, for the public cloud, you have pretty much all the same advantages as the private cloud, plus the ability to handle spikes in demand. And that's because you effectively have infinite scalability on the public cloud up to whatever your budget or bandwidth will allow you to use. And with VMX, we wanted to take a very open stance and support as much of the cloud as we possibly could. You can see that we have all the major cloud stacks supported, and really any cloud solution, be it private or public that has an API, and most of them do, we can support, because our cloud interaction is pluggable through VMX. So additional cloud plugins can be created. If there's a cloud out there that you're using or that you want to use, and you don't see it supported, contact us at ThinkBox, and we'll either help you create the plugin yourself if you want to do that, or if it's really important, we can absolutely add that cloud as a new plugin, because we really want to expand the list of clouds that we're supporting. All right, I heard another chime, so that must mean that the wizard is done with that stuff. It is, so let's continue on. So the last thing that the wizard is going to do, now that it's essentially installed a render farm on the cloud, is it's going to configure my local copy of VMX Balancer, which I'll talk about in a moment, and monitor to talk to the cloud repository that it just set up. So I'm going to click Next, and then that's going to start. And probably while I'm talking, we're going to see the splash screens for those programs pop up as the wizard launches them. But I'm going to continue.